I'm looking a little bit more dishevelled than normal, that might be because I have just jumped off the table, and that being the massage table. And it is a little bit like revisiting old times, as I benefit from the magic hands of this man sitting next to me, physio to me for so many years and to so many other phenomenal athletes and all areas of whether it be it music, be it television. Gerard has worked with top people, basically just with your hands, haven't you? Just kidding.
Yeah, Paula, I mean, I met you first in 1998.
6, I think.
96 possibly, yes. 96.
I came over and stayed when 96. You were treating my husband, Gary.
Yes, Gary came as a client first, Paula, with his knee. And then you got an injury and you came over, and then it evolved. And looking at all the athletes I've worked with over the years, there's been a lot of serious athletes from Carl Lewis right down through the champions of today. If I look at my career, it was synonymous, really. The development as a physio was synonymous with the work I did with you, because it lasted for 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
And as we spoke earlier, and we've often discussed this, you took not alone your training, but you took your recovery, you took your professionalism so far ahead of what others were doing at the time that you were 4 steps ahead of them, not just one. And one of the areas that was a challenge for me was, this girl wants physio 3 hours a day on a training camp that lasted 5 weeks. Whereas the other athletes who were world champions, like you only came for treatment when they had an injury. So this was new territory for me in 1999, 2000, that this British girl wanted physio 2 hours after a training session, after an evening session another hour, and it wasn't treating injuries, it was restorative on the musculoskeletal system as part and parcel of your recovery, working with your nutritionist, working with taking sleep to a new level, 2 hours in the afternoon with blackout blinds so that you'd actually recover better, so that you actually were way ahead of what the others were doing and use all natural techniques to enhance your performance, to become a world champion at cross country, a world champion at the marathon, winning 3 New York marathons, 3 London marathons, winning the world title at the marathon, and yet you were running 130 miles a week and sometimes higher, and people doubted, how can she run those miles without breaking down? And when you read your autobiography, you did break down, of course. You did have injuries. But you put an exhaustive program into place. And I'd often leave my wife and be gone for 5 weeks to Albuquerque. And Dan, as a doctor, and said, why would you need to spend 4 hours a day treating somebody who's running 150 miles a week, 140 miles a week, because she's not injured? Because they didn't get it. They didn't understand what the benefits you were getting from restorative therapy, as opposed to treating injuries.
And to clarify, I think some of that benefit is similar to what athletes are seeing from the super shoes now, in terms of that's reducing the wear and tear on the body, whereas my body was taking that impact, was taking the wear and tear, but you were getting it back into shape to be able to tolerate that, basically. As much as I was battering it, you were then battering the legs to get the residue and the byproducts, I guess, out so that I could do the next training session. And I'm certain that helped me recover enough to be able to do the quality as well as the quantity that we were doing back to back.
Yes, and that's a very interesting point, because I had this conversation many years ago with Dave Bedford. And of course, in the 70s, David tried to get up to 130 miles a week, thinking more mileage, 3 times a day training. But of course, he was retired at 26 because he didn't have the backup.
Yeah.
And so when you train hard, not just in terms of extensive running, like 120, 130, 140 miles, but the intensity of your training, you were doing 3 to 4 intensive sessions a week. And your long runs, you could run a 24-mile run very close to your racing pace. So it was almost at the brink. So your body breaks down. At a tissue level, your myofibrils, the small little filaments of your muscles, they get inflamed. They're destructed. So you use ice baths, you use good nutrition, you use sleep, you use restorative massage. And this isn't relaxation massage. This is serious pummeling. And this is where, I'm icing my thumbs because they're sore. And you're sore for a day, but you recover so much quicker. And yes, you do get the lymphatic system cleaned out. You do get a far better recovery from all of that. But that may not have worked with another athlete. So if I look at somebody like Sonia O'Sullivan or Kelly Holmes, who are clients of mine, that type of treatment might have totally been too much for them. They didn't try it, but it may have had an adverse effect. It happened to work well for you.
And that's another thing that we keep saying, don't we, Tom? Is it's very individual, and it's how you make your life fit around what you're trying to achieve from your running and get it all to work together.
And even if the average runner who's running a marathon in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, if they can just incorporate some stretching, take out the band, do your hamstrings, your quads, your glutes, your adductors, 15 minutes, 4 times a week, you will enhance your recovery, but you'll prevent injury.
Mm-hmm.
If you can only do, whether it's Pilates or whether it's 2 core sessions a week, and 30 minutes is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Just going into a gym and spending an hour isn't necessary. 20, 30 minutes, you can do the front plank, the side plank, the back plank. The 3 basic exercises that you need to have a good, strong core. 15 minutes, 3 times a week. Rob Peter to pay Paul. So instead of running a 50-mile week, running a 40-mile week, and do some stretching, some core work to augment your skeletal system so it doesn't break down. And we see so many recreational runners sitting low to the ground. Their bums are nearly touching the ground because they're too tight. They haven't got the strong core. Mm-hmm. And they have a great cardiovascular system. They can run the marathon in 3.5, 4 hours. But their posture, their locomotion, how they carry their body is tight from maybe their occupation, sitting at a desk all day. Tight because you're a bus driver or whatever occupation it is, and they're not doing anything to recuperate flexibility or to gain stability in the body that would allow you to run more efficiently and to lessen injury. Mm-hmm. And that's what you were doing at a greater level.
When you guys were working together, and you actually touched upon it there about you're almost the recovery and the breaking down of the body and piecing it back together through activations, how much on the, because again, you mentioned, Paul, it wasn't so much about the having injuries. It was almost making certain she stayed within her comfort zone physically and how her mechanics sat nicely in there. So how much of what you were doing was on the physio bed about loosening, but also keeping the structures tight to keep her consistent and not from breaking down?
I think it was about a balance, wasn't it? I mean, even now, I walked in here and it's a long time since I've been on that physio table. And Gerard still remembered so checking my hips, and you knew that because my leg length is unusual, I think, but it's exactly equal. But a lot of times, because of compensation and because of tightness of glute muscles and abs and just different areas, it will be out of alignment. So it'll look as though I have one leg longer than the other, but I don't. And the first thing that Gerard did today was check that. And of course that was out, and then knows exactly where to start working. So I think even though it's a while ago, he knew which of the areas on me that would tighten up, and predominantly it is.
Well, whether it's with, say, Sir Jim Radcliffe yesterday, and first session yesterday was 8 o'clock in the morning, the first thing I look at the back, the leg length, the pelvic. So if the pelvis is out of line, askew, then you're going to break down. So it's like the wheel balance. Professional cyclists, the mechanic will look at the wheel. A spoke may not be broken, but if a spoke is slightly loose, or 2 spokes are slightly loose, the wheel will go over and back and be out of true. The tire carcass will wear out quicker, whether it's a Pirelli, whether it's whatever brand it is. With the body, you're always looking at structure governing function. So you're looking at the alignment of the pelvis, checking the leg length down at the ankles to make sure one leg isn't longer, because 99% of leg length discrepancy is functional. You scan the femurs, the tibias, there's not a true leg length discrepancy. Very rare, very small percent. It's always because of abuse, use, and the way we hold our bodies, carry our bodies. It could be that the athlete runs on a country road that's cambered, or on a beach that's slanted, and it throws the hip off. But you're not doing the massage just to get the flow of blood. You're doing the tissue work, the deep tissue work, to get the structure level, so that the athlete gets off the table and their pelvis is lined up, their leg length is symmetrical, their shoulder level is symmetrical. So then it's like throwing a wheel of a car, balance, or a bicycle. And if the body works fantastic when it's in balance, but when it's out of kilter by even a small amount, off balance, things break down.
And that's why I was surprised when you mentioned the core that you didn't mention the exercises that we used to do, because all of the athletes that went to see Gerard, we did a lot of repetitive short exercises that maybe took 10, 15 minutes pretty much every other day, wasn't it? And there were step downs on the stairs in front of a mirror, holding the pelvis straight, and holding the bag, the weighted bag on your arms, so you can put a rucksack on your arms as well.
That comes from one thing. If you were to look at the recreational runner, the most important muscle when you land unilaterally on a leg, which you have to do, one leg is the swing through leg. When you land, say on the right foot, the first muscle that contracts is the gluteus medius on the side of your, not the glute max. That's the power sprint that sprints, the glute medius on the side. If that muscle either isn't strong or doesn't fire at the right time when you initiate heel stance, or if you're mid stance, then you get what we call a femoral torsion. The femur buckles in, then you're getting a knee medial irritation to the knee, patellar tendonitis, or you might get a hip bursitis. So Paula was remembering the step down exercises with the pelvis in neutral. Those exercises, Paula, were specifically to strengthen and get the firing and the timing right of the gluteus medius muscle on the side. So even your recreational runner, 4 hours, 5 hours, whether you're doing clam exercises, they have their benefit with the band on your knee. But you augment those with a functional exercise, which is your own body weight, simulating the flexion at the knee and the hip to strengthen the gluteus medius. Because running is a series of steps. You land, you load, you're a mid and forefoot striker, but most recreational runners like myself, we're Clydesdales. We land heavy on the heel, we come through the foot slowly because you're in the air. And Gabor Selassie, for example, was in the air more than he was on the ground. When you run, and you look at your videos, your fifth and fourth metatarsals were hitting. And that's why you had a lot of foot problems, but you were highly efficient. And when people looked at Paula Radcliffe in 1998, 2000, and saw all this unwanted energy going on in the neck and the head, they said she was very inefficient. But I always argued, and I used to say this to your coach, Alex Staunton, they don't look at from the pelvis down. You were very efficient mechanically from your pelvis down. That's what we call the kinematic chain. So what we started doing, and I remember in Sydney, you were fourth and you just missed that Olympic medal. It was the Portuguese girl, Fernando Ribeiro, and you just missed it. And poor Alec came up to me you were warming down, and he came up to me and he was really upset. And he said, I failed Paula, I failed her. She needs to find a new coach. I said, no, Alec, Paula has 100% trust in you. There are a few things we can do to correct her alignment, to gain power. And I remember when you did the plyometrics, the bounds, and when you started doing plyometrics, and you ran that, was it 8:22 in Monte Carlo against...
No, that was late. That was after the marathon.
After the marathon, you ran that. But your power ratio, you increased your power ratio. So your last lap was 67, 68. Now you're able to close in 61, 62, because you incorporated better posture here, and you really worked at your alignment of your shoulders. But all the time, even when you won the World Junior Cross Country, I remember seeing you up in Durham. You won a race in Durham cross country, 94, and you were up in Belfast or Mollusk. I saw you winning another race. I was there with other athletes, and you were only young. And I said, your mechanics from here down was fantastic. A little up here was askew, but you worked on that. And then post 2001, Ostend, Belgium, when you won the World Cross Country, even if it was very muddy, you were much more aligned. So you had to work. You've got to work on your weaknesses. For some people, they're weak in their pelvic area, their core. Others might be they're very tight. They need to be spending more time doing flexibility. So look at your weaknesses, because human beings like to push aside their weaknesses and work on what they're strong at. I would say, look at your weaknesses. Those, by addressing them, can become the platform to your new performance.
Now with shoes, Gerard, how are you finding that battle when you're trying to keep runners healthy with the carbon shoe technology, the extra softness? Because I felt like a lot of issues are coming through that glute med deactivation and the activation of that to work with the shoes. Are you finding that now as people, as elite athletes, or are you noticing differences from when you work with Paula to what you're working with elites today?
It's an interesting question, and I have to almost wrap myself in the knuckles a bit, because in 2003, I was involved in the minimalistic shoe, the formation and the production of what was called Nike Free. Professor Brueggemann in Cologne and I were commissioned by Nike to look at the science behind less cushioning, less control, and allowing the biological structure that's your human foot, 26 bones with multiple muscles and ligaments. If you package it in a shoe that's controlling the motion, Wolff's Law would state If you don't use it, it deconditions. So here what we have is we went down the route of getting people to, they went Vibram soles, they went back to the basic neutral shoe. And we saw injuries went down because they were using their sinews, their muscles, their tendons. There was the adaptation. When you go to a very cushioned shoe, a very controlled shoe, whether it's a carbon plate that's going to control, the foot needs to work. Each bone needs to work in symphony together. When you lock that, yes, you may be getting a mechanical advantage performance-wise. And I had this conversation a number of weeks ago with a very, very person in kinematics of the foot. We're seeing more injuries. We're seeing greater performances. We're seeing world records. We're seeing runners who are 40 minutes running 36 minutes and they haven't changed their training. No doubt the shoes are making massive. I chatted to Paula earlier. Was it 30 minutes and 1 second in Munich? It was a dirty, wet night. The track hadn't any bounce. There was no bounce off that track. You were wearing basic spikes compared with now. There was no performance benefit. Alone, the spike would be worth 30 seconds. And the track was worth a good Mondo track now. That was touching 29.20. So the performance benefit is definitely...
exaggerated.
Take it.
29.25. The performance benefit of the shoes is phenomenal, Paula, but we're seeing the consequence of that to the hips, the knees, because you're not using the kinematic system properly.
So should runners put in a balance then? Should they do a lot of foot strengthening exercises? Because we've been advising people to put in, if they are running in the super shoes, use the benefits of it, but take time out also to strengthen up all of the other areas, to run in normal shoes and to strengthen your feet.
Just hypothetically, if you're... don't need an orthotic. If you're a neutral shoe, now I'm not going in a brand, just use the neutral shoe. We'll say if it was Nike you were sponsored for years, you use the Pegasus.
Yeah.
And then you may, if you're running 60% of your running with the Pegasus, then you use your performance shoe. Like when I ran it at the University of Arkansas, we did all our running in one shoe, except for our track sessions and our intervals on the road. We used a racing shoe. So we only used spikes and the racing shoes for possibly less than 20% of our training. And we used the training shoe for
the rest. Yeah. And whereas now we're seeing it change. And that's what Tomo and I have talked about, that in our careers, we would never dream of doing a long run in your racing shoe. Whereas now the athletes can do that and recover from it because of the super shoe, but they also need to balance that.
I think they need to balance it because otherwise they're seeing more overuse injuries because the firing of the skeletal system isn't happening at the right time. They're getting faster performances. So no doubt, if I was a 40-minute, say I'm 64, and say I run 40 minutes for 10K, and I want to get faster by 2 minutes, I either lose a lot of weight, more, and come down by another 5 kgs, 6 kgs, or I train harder and I break down. But the shoe if the shoe can give me a minute and a half, which it will do, from 40 to 38, 30, I'm going to shoe. But the shoe is only designed for maybe 100 miles, 100K, 100 miles, 100, 200 miles. Those shoes are not designed. They're a performance shoe. So if you're a professional or cyclist, you're not going to put your disc wheel on the back of every time you go for a cycle. Yeah. You're not going to use your carbon fiber dished wheels only when you race. So the athletes need to go back to the basics and say, the performance shoe that are very expensive and are phenomenal for racing. Yes, use them for your tempo run, an interval session, to adapt to using them. Yes, use them for a park run on a weekend or for the half marathon, getting ready for the marathon. So you've broken them in. So you have the adaptation to the shoe and your skeletal system knows the physiology and how it works. But 60%, maybe 70% of your running should be done in your training shoe. And then you get a huge advantage when you go to the racing shoe.
So there's almost like, would you say that today it's like it's good to have obviously treatment to help with recovery, help with niggles or keeping your recovery going, but there's also a real emphasis to keep activating things through whether, small exercises at home or in the gym or whatever it is, just to keep that balance between all three things. Because you obviously, if you overdo one aspect, you overrun in one particular shoe. Even back in the day, we did try to mix up our footwear, didn't we, Paula? We didn't stick to one shoe, but today it's even more important to be mindful of having different shoes, having massage or something and having activational work, having the complete picture so you can bring out the best in the shoe. Because it's, I think it was Tony that said, and a few guests have said about, you put that much effort into trying to run a marathon, why would you not use the technology? But also that comes with that, why would you, it's worth putting in that extra layer of effort to bring out the best in the shoe and yourself. So it's almost using this technology so that it's sustainable and gets you those fast results. So I think people can understand that how to use it better, how to use it in a sustainable way, because certainly for me, the crossover was stark, like in terms of...
But I mentioned something, Chris, there that's important on the back of that.
Yeah.
So with all my athletes, even now, and this is 37 years of working with high caliber athletes, but also recreational athletes, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinopathies, rampant. I'm seeing it so much. All the programs I give, even for a 70-year-old man that I'm treating at the moment, who's a 5-hour marathon runner, he's back garden, walking barefoot, doing balance barefoot, getting the muscles used to walking on. Outside my clinic, I have a small little area on the front of the clinic which has got pebbles. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Just getting the tissues conditioned again. Because they become desensitized when you put them in a shoe the whole time, especially a shoe that's got a carbon. So just in part of the rehab, I'll get, and these are people who are running 1,500 meters in 3:31, 3:32, coming off. I won't name names, but I will get them doing 5 minutes, twice, 3 times a week on grass jogging and strides, to get the sinews, the tendons, the ligaments strengthened, to get the muscles working in harmony with the tendons, the ligaments, the bones. And that's not for training, got to do with cardiovascular or fitness. That's got to do with recovering from injury, overcoming injury, and trying to prevent injury and strengthen the foot.
So even if you're just at home, I mean, I still have little oblongs of foam that Gerard gave me that I would stand on brushing my teeth, and stand on and then try and grip with your toes and just get the foot muscle working that way. You can sit while you're watching TV with a small hand towel on the floor and just kind of use your toes to bring it towards you, to push it back, to scoop it around. Those little foot strengthening exercises don't take much time and effort. Tying an elastic TheraBand around a table leg and sitting back and just using your shin muscles to pull your foot back towards you.
That's an excellent one, Paula, because most people's calves get too tight, and the opposing muscle, there's always an agonist, antagonist. So the calf muscle is too tight and short, but the opposite muscle, the tibialis anterior, doesn't get enough workout. So by using the TheraBand, the elasticated band, sitting down, tying it onto something and doing dorsiflexion, 3 sets of 10, Paula, to get the agonist to antagonist, the opposing muscle. Yeah. That's a fantastic. And if I was to give one exercise that I would suggest to people to do, I would say every day, a kettlebell, it could be 8 kg, it could be 10 kg. The single leg Romanian deadlift.
Basically, you stand on one leg, your arms crossed in front of you, either with or without a weight, and you're going to make sure that your toe is slightly turned outward on the leg that you stood on. Pull the other toe up towards you and keep that leg straight and raised at about 45 degrees. And then you're going to lower down off the bottom step until the front leg that's straight touches the floor, and then come back up. And you're going to do 3 sets of 10, each leg of that. Just
for your average recreational runner, 4 or 5 hours, we call it the sit to stand. Okay. So get a chair, just put a chair against the wall, take a weight, and we'll say the weight is 10 kgs. And we'll say, at my age, 64, I'm not going to do a single leg at the moment. I'll get Paula to do that in a minute. But take the weight. When I use it 15 kg or 16 kg at home. All I'm doing is I'm sitting to stand and really squeeze in the glutes, come down slowly, sit to stand. You're working your glutes, your quads. Sit to stand.
Can we round this conversation towards a direction that I think is a really interesting point when it comes to being on a treatment bed, when you're trying to build up your confidence, not just through the confidence in your body, but in your mind. And obviously being on a treatment bed for a lot of elite athletes, it can be it can almost verge on a bit of a therapy session as well for the mind as well as the body. And just how, from your point of view, how that can also be part of the game to kind of help, especially when you're going into Olympics or a big race, that athlete comes off the bed, regardless, that they feel ready to go and confident mentally and physically, and how much you kind of balance that. Because obviously for you guys, you're incredibly close. We're around some big races and big moments in Paula's career, and how you kind of manage that kind of confidence building side of it as well as the physical. But just on this question, the mental side of that and how you kind of manage that in terms of bringing out the peak in an athlete.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that by stating, when you're a physio, whether you're a massage therapist or a physio, you're wearing a service provider's cap. So you put on that cap and you need to, within reason, stick within the boundaries of what you can provide, because there's a partner, there's a coach, there's a manager, and you have to be respectful not to cross the line. So in Paula's case, Alex Staunton, fantastic man, knew Paula from a young age, knew her strengths, her weaknesses. Gary also, he's years and years of experience as an international athlete. Giving those experts their, not crossing into their boundary. So I would never think I ever try to give Paula advice on your training.
No, but I think what Tomo's alluding to, I think where you were really important is all of that time when you're just getting a massage and you're just getting a massage building up to a big race. But when you're saying, oh, that session went really well, that the legs feel really good, your muscles feel really balanced, it seems as though you're strong, ready to race. That is a huge tool, I think, going into a big race psychologically in terms of making me feel that I'm ready for the race.
Correct. And if you have a service provider, be it a physio, chiropractor, osteopath, massage therapist, that you trust, even the recreational athlete, that you trust, that you've been going to once a week, once every 2 weeks for the last 5 years. They know your body. They can tell when you look tired. They can tell when you're off. They can tell when you have maybe something going on, and it can be a confessional, and you can give them advice, and you can tell them, listen, back off because you're a little tired. I had a situation a few weeks ago where on the table I felt something, what we call the viscosity of the client's tissues was just sticky. It was sticky. There was something not right compared with normal, because I know this person. And I said, there's either two things. You're either dehydrated or you're drinking too much alcohol. And they had a hard 4 or 5 days.
People, it wasn't me.
And the tissue just didn't have that nice pliability. There was something off, and I didn't feel I could go deep because it was off. And that client came back to me in the past week and said, since that session, I haven't drank any alcohol. Because he knew that, 3 or 4 gin and tonics, a few beers, bang, 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 too much. And he just didn't feel happy in himself. But he could not believe that I could tell. You're drinking a lot of coffee, you're dehydrated, but there's alcohol in your system. You can tell that with your hands. You know what? There's no hocus pocus. As physios, if you're doing this game 37 years and you're feeling tissue, it's like I could close my eyes. I can do the day job with my eyes closed.
And I'll just break off there just to tell a little story. So Gerard talked about one of the world cross countries. And in 2002, I was building up to make my debut in the London Marathon, and I picked up a knee injury, and I came back to Limerick to spend a few days with Gerard. At that point, I was, I think, maybe a week out from the world cross country and 4 weeks out from the London Marathon. And I remember Gerard checked the back of my knee, and we couldn't find, there wasn't an obvious torn injury. It was just more tightness. And I vividly remember him saying to me, okay, we're going to have to take a risk. I'm going to go with my instincts, and I'm going to have to get in the back of the knee and do that cross friction. It's going to really hurt. But before we do that, because I don't know if it's going to work, and you may not be able to run the London Marathon, I want you to go to the World Cross Country, and it's going to hurt, but you're not going to do it any damage. Run the World Cross Country, so at least you've got that. So we went luckily it was down the road in Dublin. So we went to Dublin, ran the World Cross Country. It was absolutely right. It did tighten up, but I was able to push through it, and it didn't damage any further. And then we came back. I think it was even that night. I think
we were back in the clinic on the Sunday night. Yeah. You won in Leopardstown that day. And we were back in the clinic that evening doing a 2-hour treatment session. And
honestly, I was crying my eyes out, and it was the most painful thing I think I've ever gone through. And for 2 days after that, we didn't run, and then went out for a run, and it was gone. And stayed there for another couple of weeks and did the bulk of my getting ready for London there. But ultimately, that first marathon experience was saved because Gerard trusted his instincts, didn't jeopardize the World Cross Country, and actually confidence-wise, winning that World Cross Country was important for me, whether or not I got to go to London. But I vividly remember standing on the start line out in Blackheath and just thinking, I'm really going to enjoy this, because very nearly I couldn't have been here. And if it wasn't for Gerard getting in there and getting that little, it was a pop to tears.
Well, I remember driving to Dublin. I had a Mercedes-Benz at the time. We drove to Dublin. I had you sitting in the front seat beside me, and I had 2 blocks of ice, one wrapped in one of those things that keeps the colour, and I wanted you icing 10 minutes every 20 minutes on the way up to Dublin. And it was warming up for the race. Could go either way, but you won the race. You won the World Cross Country. We got the hell out of there as quick as we could. Got down to Limerick, did more physio. It was a gamble.
And it paid off.
And it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, it was one tiny little muscle on the back of the knee, and one that is actually quite sensitive to get into, isn't it? Yeah.
And that, in fairness, Paula, that's what there's the science would tell you, no, rest, scrap everything. The art, the ability to feel, to judge. And is it a gamble? I don't call it a gamble. You go by your clinical sense. And you develop that over years and years and years. Malcolm Gladwin with his 10,000 hours, 20,000, 40,000 hours gives you the experience.
For the majority of the people getting ready for London who are going to be listening to the podcast, it's better to be investing in maybe once a week, once every 10 days in the hard training rather than putting it all just before the race.
Correct. That's a good point. And I mean, I'd always say to people, they ring me up or send me an email, where they live, who's the best? Go to the local club. The local club runner will know. The guy who's been running for 30 years, he will know. And the best therapist mightn't be in a fancy clinic. The best therapist could be the side of his house. And these people, they've been doing it for years and years and years. On the Irish football team under Jack Charlton, famous Jack Charlton, there was a famous Mick Byrne. And Mick Byrne was never qualified, but he had a feel. His dad before him had a feel. I remember going to the Olympics as a head physio of the Irish Olympic team in '96. And Mick was the official masseuse. And he couldn't go in the end because he hadn't a qualification and he had no insurance. But sometimes those people, if they're grown up and running, they know that indigenous population. Talk to the local club runners who've been running for years. Who's the go-to person for good tissue massage? And then develop a rapport. They get to know your body. And like Paula said, don't ever wait until the 3 days beforehand and say, oh, I'm tight, I need. Go once every 2 weeks even. Invest in yourself. But don't underestimate what you can do for yourself. Is more. I didn't compete at a level like you, Paula, but I was competed for Ireland in triathlon at 14th in the world and that. But in my whole year at the University of Arkansas for 4 years on a running scholarship and then 12 years in triathlon, I think I was with a physio 6 times in my whole athletics career. Because I self-managed. I read books, I was stretching, I was doing stuff. There's so much you can do yourself and take ownership of it. So I use this sentence, listen to the whispers. The whispers are the stage before something becomes a problem. When it becomes an injury, now you're going to the professional. You're getting the MRI scan. You're going to the doctor for the prescription to get the scan, and then you're waiting 6 weeks to get the scan. It's too late. The whispers are the telltale that something is askew. Listen to the whispers. Try to self-manage it by all means, with your icing, your stretching, taking a couple of days off. How many athletes don't take a couple of days off? The first thing you should do is take 2 days off. Maybe go to the pool, maybe get on the stationary bike. Unload the area, give it a chance. Most tissue injuries recover very quickly if given the right time. Most tissue injuries last between 3 and 5 days. But if you mess with them and try to push through them, they become chronic. So take that 48 hours away from running and say, yes, my schedule is to do a 12-mile run, or my schedule was to do a 20K tempo. Take it out for 2 days. Just shift the goalpost and take that session out. Let it recover, because 90% of soft tissue whispers that are stiffnesses and sorenesses and aches will heal uneventfully in 2 or 3 days and then get back on your training.
And that's a really good point, I think, to end on is listening to that, because how many of times have we said, look at the bigger picture, look at the overall thing of the work that you've done, and in the scale of all of that, 2-3 days, complete rest to get rid of a niggle before it becomes something that's going to maybe take you out of London or take you out for a couple of weeks is really, really worth it.
And we always see, Paula, people jamming, that they're 4 weeks out and if they jam too much in. I say to recreational runners, less is more. Less is more. Cull a bit. You're better off going to the starting line without any ailments, totally ready for it, less training, and have the hunger and not carrying somebody. The person who's really trained and has stepped over that cliff and has a calf they're not sure will get it through, their head is gone. They don't have the head. At least if you're having the training done, you have the willpower and you have the excitement, you can perform as well.
Yeah. keep slogging away at it, keep getting those long runs done, and keep the eye on the rose at the end of it on April the 27th.
Pleasure to chat with you, Paula,
Thank
again.
you so much.
Absolute star, mate. You're an absolute star.
Yes.
Now, as we do mention very regularly, we are extremely proud to partner with Children with Cancer UK to bring you this special series of the podcast. And it is now a pleasure to introduce someone that actually has become a really good friend along with the rest of his family, but one of the many young people whose lives have been touched by the charity. And it is Isaac Fell. At just 9 years old, Isaac was diagnosed with cancer. His journey through 3.5 years of treatment was filled with challenges, but thanks to the support of his family, friends and incredible charities like Children with Cancer UK, he came through stronger than ever, is running personal bests and did keep running athletic races and training with the rest of his family when he could all the way through his treatment. So let's listen to Isaac.
Hi, I'm Isaac Fell. I'm 18 years old. I'm currently at university at St Mary's in Twickenham, London. I'm studying sports science and I'm there also for the EPC programme, which is the Endurance Performance Centre, where I'm basically training to become a professional athlete. I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia back in February 2016 when I was 9 years old. I was actually training down at the athletics track when I first started getting a little bit of pain in my spine, and I thought it was weird. I went to various doctors, had loads of tests, and no one could quite pinpoint what was wrong with me, but eventually then I got diagnosed. I ended up having 3.5 years of treatment, and I finished my treatment in May 2019. It was all really smooth, and with the help of so many people, family, friends, Children with Cancer UK being a big one there, loads of support from them. Yeah, I'm all fit and healthy now. I'd just like to say a massive good luck to everyone running the London Marathon for Children with Cancer UK. Go out there and smash it. Trust your training, trust the process, and then on race day, just enjoy it and have fun. Take in all the crowds and just, enjoy the London landmarks. So thank you for everyone supporting Children with Cancer UK, and go and smash it.
Thank you very much, Isaac. It's great to hear you thriving and to see those results and to see how you're getting on at uni as well. And a huge thank you to all of the runners supporting Children with Cancer UK. Every mile that you run is helping to fund vital research and support for children facing cancer. To donate or to find out more about the charity, there is a link, as always, in the description. And that is, I'm afraid, all that we've got time for this week. Please don't forget to email in your questions to hello@paulasrunpod.com or message us on Instagram @paulasrunpod, and we will get round to it, answering as many of those as we possibly can. Paula's Marathon Run Club is a Viral Tribe entertainment production. It has been a pleasure to be with you one more week, and keep going, keep on at that hard slog, and we'll catch you next week.